Welcome to the What is Smart podcast. We dive deep into the ever-evolving world of intelligence, learning, and success. Join us as we engage with leading educators, psychologists, technologists, and thinkers, unraveling insights and challenging old notions. From EQ to creativity, from tech savviness to social awareness, What is Smart is your guide to understanding intelligence in the 21st century. Let's change education together. What's going on, everybody? It's Garrett here at What is Smart. What is Smart is brought to you by the Gardens Foundation, to which I just so happen to be the founder of. The Gardens Foundation is out there in the trenches, doing the work, throwing the jab, coming with the cross to actually change education on the ground level for learners. We know, friends, that how we operate in life, in business, in success no longer maps to the experience that we have in the classroom for our learners. And guess what? If you're an old guy like me, it still didn't map to what success looked like in the future. Hence my, 1.8 report card graduating high school with mounted on my wall. Ladies and gentlemen, go to the website. All of this costs money. You can donate on the website. You can pick up What is Smart merch. We have sweatshirts, t-shirts, all kinds of great stuff. Great conversation starter. Guys, we have an awesome guest. I can't wait to get into it. But until then, please visit the website. Go check it out. Thanks much. We love you. 2, 1. All right. Welcome to What is Smart, where we redefine intelligence in education. Today, I'm thrilled to have Katie Kinder with us. An educator since 2006, Katie has been recognized as Teacher of the Year at her school, amazing, and a top 5 Teacher of the Year for her entire district, also amazing. She's been honored as the Oklahoma City Rotary Teacher of the Month and is a top 100 educator in Oklahoma on Twitter. Katie is X now, sorry guys. Katie is the author of Untold Teaching Truths and Hallway Leadership, a TEDx speaker, that's rad, and a leader in educational professional development. I'm super excited to welcome Katie to the podcast. Katie, thank you so much for joining What is Smart today.
Oh my goodness, I'm so glad to be here, Garrett. Thank you so much. I'm super into what you're doing, and I'm honored to be here today. It's awesome.
Well, thank you so much. Like I said, we have people out in the ether webs, if you will, finding people just like you to give us and our listeners and viewers a different perspective on what you think smart is. And we like to always just like jump into it. It's like when you go to the pool, and like right now, actually, you go to the pool and it's still a little iffy and you're like, gosh, and your kid, like I have 5 kids and the kids just jump in like, whatever. And I'm like, no. Cool. But we like to do that here. So we're going to make you do it anyway. If we could get a little bit of an origin story from you, how you found education as a passion, and then ultimately how that led to educational consulting and the work you do, speaking, writing, all of those amazing things. So tell our viewers.
Yes. Okay. So I started my journey as an educator in 2006, but it really started way before that because my mom is an educational rock star. She was a principal, superintendent. She is the epitome of a transformational leader. Like, she took a school that was failing and in 7 years turned it around. And her school was surrounded by low income housing projects. And there was not a grocery store, and there was not like the families couldn't get food. And so she just was innovative, and every single family, by the time she was done being the principal there, had a plot of land where they were growing their own food. I know. And
amazing.
I know. And so her story is amazing as well. And so I grew up in her light and I grew up in her shadow. And she said, I think you're a teacher. I think you're a teacher. And at the time, I was just this petulant teenager, teenagers. And I'm like, you don't know me. And so I went to the University of Oklahoma. I got my public relations degree, journalism, and I started in on that route. And I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. It was just kind of and I was working for the Muscular Dystrophy Association, and I credit them for bringing me to my calling, because once a month, the DECA students from around the nation, you know, are a national sponsor of MDA. And so once a month, I got to pull up to an Oklahoma high school and work with the high school students. And my heart, Garrett, would pitter pat. And they were my best days. And it took me 2 full years to call my mom and be like, you were right. Like, and she said, she wasn't gracious. She grounded me. I was 24.
She's like, yeah,
She's like,
I know.
She's like, give me your car keys. You're grounded.
Yeah.
So I stepped into my very first classroom. I did alternative certification. I went back. I got my certificate, and I stepped into a 9th grade English class, and I knew nothing. Like, I didn't know what I didn't know. And so I started teaching the way that I had been taught, which was like straight rows, read out of the book, answer the questions in the back. And then I was wondering why I was having classroom management issues. And because the kids are bored, they're bored. And so I really started to change and grow. I think as teachers, as educators, public education, especially, we have those days where we're like, I'm going to quit. I'm done. I'm done with this. I'm going to quit. I'm done.
More and more, right?
Yeah. Huge teacher shortage. And I was having one of those days. I came home and I just started YouTubing, you know, how to teach. How do you
How
teach?
to teach.
Yeah, like Google, like how to teach. So funny. And
Teaching for dummies.
Right, 100%.
Like this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I came across Ron Clark. And I looked into his stuff and I ordered his books, and he had this 20-minute keynote, and I was just riveted. And he was talking about how this English teacher was sitting on her stool of drool because she's boring. And I was like, oh my gosh, he's talking about me. And I just started to grow and change. And I started to like get out of my classroom and go and watch innovative teachers and go. And I think sometimes that feels taboo to some of us, especially the baby teachers. I'm a huge, like, I love the baby teachers.
Baby teachers,
the baby teachers, the new teachers, and whether they're coming to us from a different career and they're 50 or they are straight up out of college, like, I love to foster and love on the baby teachers, because I think a lot of times they don't have the confidence to say, I am drowning and I don't know what to do. And so I, you know, as a new teacher, I was just like hungry for, you know, best practices and what we can do and brain research. And I just started to grow and change and do better. And I really have taken that on in my 18 years as an educator. Woo. Is that, I know, God, I'm 43. And so I know, oh, hey.
Yeah.
And so I believe in that growth mindset. I believe no one has it figured out. I believe our kids are constantly evolving and changing, and that we've got to try new things. And we can't ever say those words, like the words that, you know, can kill a school, which is, we've always done it this way. And we have to, I know. And I'm like, well, that's not a reason to continue to do anything.
That's right.
Yeah. And so that is kind of my origin story. I started just innovating in the classroom and trying new things and trying to create these experiences for my kids that would last a lifetime. And I started winning some awards, and then I would go and speak at these conferences. I did internal training for my own district forever. Like, I was a mentor teacher. I trained all the new teachers, and I had a friend say, you know, I'm putting on this conference. Will you come do a breakout? And I was like, okay. And so I put something together, and it was amazing that people got in line and they're like, hey, you should write a book. And I'm like, okay, you should write a book. Who has time for that? Like, who has time? You know, as a parent and as an educator, like,
has
time for that? And so then March 13th, 2020, and we know what happened, right? And so with the time the pandemic afforded me, I wrote my first book, which is Untold Teaching Truths, and released it. And it really was just like part memoir, part how do we do this? Here, baby teachers, vet teachers who've lost their spark, and how do we love on the teachers? And then from there, it's just grown. And I started booking speaking gigs, and I started training teachers, and now I'm out, and that's what I do full time. And it is so fun and a blessing. And I go all over the nation and love on the teachers and do keynotes and teacher training. And it's really fun. Yeah.
I'm sure. And thank you so much for the context for our listeners and for our viewers, and more so for the dedication. 18 years. I'm in it 25 myself, which is crazy,
Yes.
but always on the early learning side. And I think one of the things you had mentioned is it's funny because there is this narrative of, you said it and I've heard it before, I'm out. It's like you're in prison for and you're like, look, I paid my dues, I'm out. But one of the things you said that's so authentic and so true is like, I love on them. And teachers, what we found in speaking with, tons of people on this subject is teachers, if you're in it for the right reasons, are in it for your heart, right? We
Mm.
know that no teacher is like, let me go teach middle school for the money. You know what I
Right.
mean? Let me go do that. That doesn't exist. So you have to have that love. And a lot of times right now we're in the biggest teacher burnout ever.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I think part of that is that, one, we have fear-based leadership in a lot
Mm.
of these school systems,
Mm.
to where even, and I don't even fault the leaders of these school systems, because they're reporting numbers that inform, budget and inform money to their school systems. However, it creates this dynamic where, hey, are you down? We're going to beat on you even
Right.
more. You know what I
Right.
mean? And
Like if you're
so,
good, we're going to keep putting more and more and more on you.
exactly.
Absolutely.
It's
Absolutely.
almost like educators should just play it cool out there. Like, don't like make a big stink. You don't want to say, "Hey, I'm doing really well," because then you're going to be doing more really well or poorly. But, in going around the country and in writing your book, Untold Teaching Truths, and Hallway Leadership, I think
Mm.
leadership is one key to how we change culture. We talked offline about, believing that the right tools, the right frameworks, coupled with a culture
Mm.
of love of learning and leadership, trickling down, is kind of the future in my mind of how we should move forward in education. Of course, the frameworks are totally different, but in your work, what are some keys, right, to talk about loving on teachers? How do we empower leaders to have that same motivation and love that you do,
Mm.
in your expression in the classroom?
Sure. Like I think that we are in the people business. I think that leaders have to remember that we're in the people business. So you are not going to affect any change by sitting in your office. And we can literally sit
Oh,
in our
really?
office.
I gotta go. No.
I gotta go. I'm out. I mean, we have the paperwork and we have the things that we have to do. And we could look at the cameras all day. We could do some things and we could feel busy.
Right.
But if you're not a visible leader, if the kids in your school don't know who the principal is, if you are not checking in on your teachers and don't have your thumb on the pulse of your building, then you can't lead. And one of my favorite quotes is, if serving is beneath you, then leadership is beyond you. So that's
Whoa, who
right. Did
said
that
that?
just
Do you
blow your
know?
mind? I
Do you
don't,
know?
will you find out and put it in the show notes? I have looked it up. It is attributed to several people. I know a friend of mine, Charles Williams, who is the velvet voice of education, says it a lot. And he's also a speaker and
Can
principal.
you say it? Sorry to interrupt. Can you say it one more time?
Yes. So
I
if
want to sink it
leading,
in.
yes, if leading is, or if serving is beneath you, then leading is beyond you. Isn't
Amen.
that just like tweetable? That is tweetable on the
Mm.
X. And
On
so
the X,
on
the X.
the
Got
X,
it.
on the social medias. So I believe that wholeheartedly. Like we have to serve the people. We have to know their stories. And I say this across the country to leaders. Like
Mm.
you can't really be mad at the teacher down the hall if you know that their mom just died. You cannot be mad at the principal or assistant principal, if you don't know their story, if you don't know that they are going home to a chronically ill child, and like, I just think we have to have each other. And that is how you create culture. And that is how you create this culture of like a family school. And we have each other. And this is messy. This work can be very messy. But at the end of the day, I'm going to serve you. You are going to serve me. And we are going to serve our kids. And it's easier said than done for sure. But I think you got to get out. And that's what Hallway Leadership is really about, that book. It is about servant leadership. It's about getting out and being seen and just a compilation of
Servant
stories.
leadership.
Servant leadership.
Yes. I
And,
wrote this, and it backwards it says empathy.
oh,
But
yes.
I think you point out such an important note. Like, one of my business mentors is this guy, Gary Vaynerchuk, and he makes it big because he's very much active on social media and all of that stuff. But one of the things he said was, culture is everything in a business. And, part of leadership is putting your players in the right position to be their best selves. And I think part of that is coming at it, like you said, with empathy, learning who you have as people, because it allows you to frame your mindset as a leader to understand your employees more. And it gives you the self-awareness of the people around you to know who's going to culturally fit in based on that understanding. So I think one of the things that I learned is, on the tough side of things, is if you have the best teacher, right? And they're performing every single day in the classroom, and then they go to the teacher's lounge and make everybody's lives miserable, you have to fire that person, because culturally, it's so much more important to have that hallway leadership of servant. Is the mindset can't be, you work for me. You've already lost in that mindset. If the mindset is, I work for you, which I try to tell every single one of my employees,
Love that.
not only do I work for you, but it's all my fault. So you can take that off of your shoulders. I take responsibility for it. I take responsibility for you, and then who's under you, and then who's under you, and those learners in the classroom, all of those people. I'm willing to take that. And talk about servitude is like, that is the full embodiment of that. So when you talk about it, and you lead other leaders to this, how much pushback do you get, especially from older leaders in admin?
I mean, sometimes I get I believe that with the right training and with the right tools, that everybody can be a servant leader. I believe that we, as teachers, we have to have a growth mindset. When I was an instructional coach, growth mindset, we just have to have that. As a superintendent, you also have to be in the hallways of your school district. Like, you have to serve. And so I believe that it can be taught. Mostly I get from educators everywhere is time. Like, I don't have time. I don't have the time to, like, I have to deal with this. And mostly principals are feeling like they have to put out fire after fire after fire after fire, when if they could kind of relinquish some of that control to their teacher leaders, to their guiding coalition, to their people, they really can get in classrooms every day, and they really can walk the halls every day. And I just think we have to be people before we are data, before we are, like, I need my administrators to know that I am a mom, and that every once in a while my kids get sick and I need to go home, and that they can step into my class and take care of and I know that my students at school are taken care of because my leadership cares about me. So I think just like switching that mindset is huge.
I would
And
agree. I think growth mindset in general should be, and Carol Dweck's work in general should be, bleeding into schools, but that is only done through leadership. And we do see that. And that's kind of what I go back to with self-awareness is, I think if you're a leader in schools right now and you're playing this us versus them mentality, it's never going to win. You need to really ask yourself, is this the right job for me? Because ego is the great destroyer of education in general. If you come at
Mm,
it, you said it in the beginning, which is, if you're willing to just accept that you don't have it all figured out, then you're already on the right path to empowering leaders to be successful in the world, because you have to take your L's. You own your L's, but the difference is you learn from your L's, right? Like, to
100%.
move forward. And I just think, more people like you should be out there, in professional development environments, in speaking engagements, because that's how that cultural shift is going to happen. Just in general, is because there has to be some kind of awareness towards this issue. And I do challenge teachers. You said something about Ron, say his
Ron
name
Clark.
again. Ron
Ron
Clark.
Clark.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes. So another speaker, from my understanding.
Yes. He has his own school as well.
Yes. And
Yep.
so, talking a lot about, gosh, you were saying Ron Clark when it comes to, I'm losing my train of thought here, and I had a really good question. Oh, well, we'll move on
Innovation,
from it.
gamification, changing the classroom, like making
That's
it
right. I think that's
experience.
exactly right. That's exactly right. So what I was going to say, thank you, and we'll cut that little bit out. But
Okay.
what I was going to say when it comes to Ron Clark is, there is some sense of, you have to step up as an educator, as a leader, as a
Mm,
servant to, to the people around you. For educators, it's the learners in your classroom, or get out. Like, that's my point is, yes, we're already in this huge shortage, but there are certain people that just won't accept anything other than what you started out with, which is
mm,
this control-based leadership of check the boxes, move
mm.
forward. But we all know that we have to make our learners people too, right? So,
Absolutely.
is there an example of, you talk about getting all these, awards of teacher of the year, things like that, like, I always grew up in private school environment. I did not go to private school, trust me on that one, but in my educational career, private school. But, talking about the oh crap, where was I going with this? I am totally sorry, so sorry. Anyway, we'll move on.
That's okay. That's
um
okay.
Woo, with three businesses, there's always a
Of
bajillion things
course. And
going on in my
5
brain.
children. I mean, come on.
No, but yeah, what I was going to say is going back to kind of owning the classroom and being teacher of the year. See, this is how it works. This is how my brain
Okay.
works.
I'm good with it.
Um, so what are some examples, Katie? Is there some cool one event in the classroom that you did that was way outside the box? I would love to hear like an inspirational moment for some of our listeners and viewers, of like an example of how, here's the expectation, Katie. Here's you going way above and beyond for your learners. Is there a specific example of that?
I have so many examples, but I think
I
one of the
figured.
most I think one of the most powerful moments in my classroom comes at kind of the end of the year in April. And so I really build this family classroom, and I build this sense of like we have each other. I do a lot of gamification. We have
Love it.
fun, love gamification. We do debates. We do a lot of cool things. But as we journey through Anne Frank's diary, and a lot of my kids don't know that she dies. And by
Right.
April, make no mistake about it, that we have each other and we are not in our individual cliques. We're not like, we are Miss Kinder's babies. Like, here we are. And so as we journey through it, she is really funny and she gets her first kiss and she is 14, just like they are. And so they really connect with her. And on the day that she dies, I'm ready. I have blacked out my windows and I have
Mm,
a candle, a fake candle for each person in the annex that dies. And I've got my lights out. We hold up the candle, we switch off their life. And I kind of tell them what happened to each of them. And then, of course, the last one is Anne. And then we write her, we have a funeral. We write her uh, we write her. It's okay. My daughter's trying to keep the dogs from ruining the podcast.
It's all good. Don't worry about it. Dogs are welcome.
Okay.
Cats are not.
We write her a letter about what she meant. And I've got funeral music playing, and I've got kids in tears. I've got 250-pound football players bawling their eyes out. And they remember it. So I was at graduation, and I tell this story in my keynote. I was at graduation. They always invite me to graduation. I'm kind of a rule breaker in that I don't want to see them just walk across the stage from way far away. Like, I want to go see my babies. And once they're my babies, they're always my babies. So I walk into where they're holding them, like in the gym.
Love
and
it.
I'm like, feel like Beyonce, like without the talent and body and all, like money and like, they're like,
I mean, small factors. Overall, very similar. Right.
And they're like, Miss Kinder, and some of them, they haven't seen me in a second, and they break down and they cry. And so I've got this one kid, and he's running at me, and we battled every day, Justice and I taught him for 2 years, and I love him, but we battled, and he was a tough kid, and he's running at me. And they change a lot from 8th grade to seniors, and he's like, Miss Kinder, and I'm like, oh my gosh, Justice. And he hugs me and he picks me up, and he's like, I love you, I'm going to college. And he said, I have a really important question for you. And I'm like, I'm ready. And he says, are you still making people cry with that Anne Frank?
Hell yeah.
And I'm like, Justice, I am. And he was like, that's a good job. Because see, Justice doesn't remember any one thing in that one line in that book, but he remembers the way that he felt the day that his friend Anne died. And 5 years later, he's still thinking about it. And so I think that's a really powerful moment in my class, but I've got so many stories like that. We do a poetry lounge and lean into that. We just do a lot of really cool things. And my kids I love this. When a kid looks up and it's like, oh man, it's time to go. Like, we just got here. They don't look at their phone. Mm-hmm. They're not trying to sneak on. Like, they love it. And it's wrapped around rigorous life skills that they need. So
I'm glad that you didn't say rigorous schoolwork, because I believe that project alone is what learning should be. Like you said, like permanent learning is driven by an emotional investment in the subject and interest. And yeah, like calculus isn't interesting to me, right? But there are ways in which you can make calculus interesting to me. It just takes a little extra effort. And why are we doing it in the first place, guys? Like, we're there to touch the lives of kids and inspire them to keep the intrinsic motivation to learn within them, and not allow, this kind of, I don't know, Rockefellerian system of school punch that motivation out of us. And it does. It like, we could have all the standards, we could have all this policy and stuff, which we do, that informs really terrible education on the ground, but it still comes down to you in the classroom with those learners, with the door closed. That becomes your world. Like, I wish educators would take the responsibility that you have for your learners. I wish everyone would do that, because, I've been around a long time in this industry, and I do see, you can point them out right at the get-go. Talk about baby teachers, the ones that are willing to just fall into the narrative of, oh, this is the word, and I'm going to go to the bar and talk, S about the parents. And, if you're going to get into that, right, which is a total lane, it's the majority lane of educators. Or you could take that time, you could remember this conversation, and you can say, nope, I'm going to continue down the road of what matters is, who cares what, Ethel in the PE department thinks about you or whatever. Like, Ethel, I don't know. Ethel sounds old. Ethel sounds old.
Ethel is 98.
I was about to say, and from Oklahoma. Definitely from Oklahoma. But no, my point being is, I think we have to make that choice every day when we wake up is either I'm going to go down that road of and make excuses and say I don't have time and say, well, you speak to a very good point, which is you can have time given some new ways of doing things that other
Absolutely.
people that are not on the ground are
Mhm.
thinking about. While
Yeah,
you're thinking about your learners, someone like you, Katie, is thinking about how to help those educators with their learners. Lean
absolutely.
into that. That's what I was going to talk to you
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
earlier when I lost track of my thoughts. So that
We're
being said,
human.
Katie, yeah,
We're
that
just
being
human.
said, what's that?
I said we're just human. We lose train of
Oh,
thought. 5
yes.
kids, 3 businesses. Like
Yeah, and you know, I really try to put tools in my life. This is my opportunity to have like great conversation, but typically I have alerts pinging
yeah.
all over the place to manage my what is needed in entrepreneurship, which is ADHD, to manage all of those things. A little bit of crazy. It takes a little bit of crazy to innovate and go forward. So we will ask you, Katie. You know, you've had a great career in doing, you know, such amazing work within the classroom. One of the examples that you talk to our viewers about is just so meaningful and powerful. Even if, like you said, like even if it isn't the content, they remembered how that moment made them feel, and that's just so important. So talking about that, quantifying that in a classroom, we ask you as we wrap up the show today, we ask you the question we ask everybody. And remember, there is no right answer, but there are definitely some consistents that we hear. I'm interested to hear your perspective. But Katie, what is smart?
Gosh, I really believe that all of our kids, all of our adults are coming to us with intelligence that they've either tapped into or they haven't yet. And so maybe we have a kid who is never going to sit and write a 5 paragraph essay perfectly, but they are going to be able to fix they're going to have 3 businesses. They're going to be able to fix they're going to be able to fix the car, and we need every last one of us. Maybe the teacher down the hall just needs the tools to be able to create these meaningful, like, we're not cookie cutter people. We shouldn't be. How boring is all of that? And so, I have 2 kids. I have a daughter and a son, and they could not be any more different. You know this as a dad. And they
Mm-hmm.
both come to class with just all of this intelligence. Some of it's emotional intelligence, some of it, like, just they're just different. And that should be celebrated. That we should be celebrating our kids, that we are not a one size fits all in society, and we shouldn't be at school either, and we shouldn't be at home, and we shouldn't be anywhere. So that's really what I think smart is that we all come with invaluable skills that we have to tap into and pull that out of our kids and of our adults. Absolutely.
Fully agree in self-awareness, in hopefully in the future having a school environment where that helps kids explore that, right? Like you
Absolutely.
said, some are just innate, but some talents are they have to be discovered, and you can only
Sure.
discover things by having new experiences and getting out and
Right.
trying new things. And
Yes.
you know, it's very cool. You'd love our schools, and in our foyers in all of our schools we have the saying, the world needs who you were made to be. And I
Yeah.
think that
I love that.
that's,
When you come visit.
yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. You're always welcome to come nerd out with all of our nerdy teachers, because
Absolutely.
we're just like you. We really try to, you know, I try to lead a brand that is all in. And
Mm.
if you're not, then move to another school,
Bye.
move to another brand. And thankfully my employees know that, and they love the fact that we can
I'm
say
sure.
we're out there creating candlelight moments in the classroom ourselves. I just think it's so awesome what you do, Katie. And
Thank
that being
you.
said, thank you so much. We like to give you the platform to tell our listeners and viewers as we grow in this show. Thank you so much, guys out there. Where they can find you on the interwebs, how school systems can get in touch with you to come out and do a little bit of speaking and motivating and loving on the teachers.
Loving on the teachers. Yeah, so I was honored to be here today. So fun. I love what you're doing as well. So you can find me at katiekinder.com, Untold Teaching
Put it right
Truths.
here. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Untold
Also
Teaching
right here.
Truths, Hallway Leadership. You can find me on X at katiekinder1, on Instagram at Untold Teaching Truths. And it sounds really silly to say, Garrett, but I'm Googleable, which is really dumb to say out loud. But you can Google me and I'll come up. It's funny, my teal glasses have become such a brand. They've
Yeah,
become brands and unintentional. Like I didn't mean
I
for it to
love them.
happen.
Yeah.
It's turned into like a symbol. And I throw out fake ones at conferences, and I just had a school district order 600 fake pairs of glasses so they can
As a
all be
reminder.
wearing them. Yeah, they're going to wear them while I'm speaking to them at convocation. Like, and then yeah, they can use them as a prop in the classroom, like just things like that. And so I had a lady say, I remembered that you were blonde, and I remember that you were that teal glasses lady. And then that's all I could remember. I couldn't remember your name. And she's like, so I put it in Google. I put that teal glasses lady, education blonde, and you came up. I was like, oh my gosh, my mind is blown right now. Like
The Google knows it all. That's so funny. You're like, I hate to mention Google me. It does sound like, oh, why didn't you Google me? But how funny is that? That like, coming from us, which was an analog past digital future,
right,
it doesn't seem so far ago when all these phones seem like Star Trek stuff. You know what I
right,
mean? And
right, right,
it's
right.
crazy. But yeah, we thank you so much, Katie, and know
Thank
that
you.
we'll have other opportunities to come back on the show. We have a summit coming up soon where we're going to
Absolutely.
invite all of our previous guests to start having those big Avengers of education conversations.
Yeah.
We look forward to hopefully having you there. But that being said, folks, thank you so much for tuning in today. We always like to give you a nice little short, long, I almost said short, long drive. Don't want to do that. Short drive home, not long drive. Don't do it if it's a long drive, unless you love your kids. But we will have another amazing guest on our next episode. Katie, thanks so much for sharing
Thanks,
your
friends.
perspective. Yeah, thank you so much. And tune in to What is Smart next time, brought to you by the Gardens Foundation. We love you guys. We can't wait to bring another amazing guest from the Gardens Foundation and from What is Smart. Have a fantastic evening. Bye-bye, everyone.